Hey pretty people, my name is Bins and welcome to a new video in the Shapez BEASTMAM series. Today we're gonna dig in, and we're gonna dig in deep. We are going to open up Pandora's box to look at what makes this machine tick. Literally, the clock. If the decoder is like a car, then the clock is its engine. The clock is what enables one shape piece combo to be blasted through the decoder with a frequency of 1 tick. This means that if my frame rate is at 20 FPS, for example, then the machine will roughly check 20 shape combos every second. The clock is a crafty piece of work, if I may say so myself, and we're definitely going to need more than one video to cover it. So within chapter 4, we are going to open up a new sub-chapter, and within that, we are going to start the first episode, building the clock. In order to be able to create a machine that checks shape combos, we need to be able to create floating pieces. And in order to start cycling through them, we need a cycler, a clock. Like, for example, this one. In this example, you can see that whenever the colored quadrant of a piece jumps from the top left to the top right, the shape right next to it moves 1 position. And if we look closely, this current clock actually outputs a new shape value every 2 ticks, not 1. Look at this. Tick, 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 and so on. All right? And now you might think, well, what's the big deal? A frequency of 2 ticks is already faster than the human eye. And while 2 ticks is also quite fast indeed, I told you that this machine might need to run hundreds of iterations before it can ultimately find a solution. So the difference between 1 tick and 2 in the heart of the decoder, the clock, that would ultimately accumulate to a difference between perhaps 20 seconds and 40 to eventually come up with a solution, which I find quite considerable. So I definitely wanted to find a way to slash that in half. And not only that, I wanted to make a hybrid clock that would be capable of performing 2 functions. Firstly, it needed to be able to switch to its next value on every tick. And secondly, it should be able to indefinitely retain the state it would be in until it received a pulse and then switch over to the next state. Like in the example on screen, all displays except the first, they retain their current positions until the shape to their left has made a full rotation. So now, for example, you are going to see that on the next tick, the green is going to switch over. There we go. Oh, and the blue as well, right? So always, if we get a switch from top left to top right, then the next shape is going to switch over as well. So, and creating a machine that is capable of doing that both every tick or whenever it receives a pulse, that is actually not as straightforward to combine as you might think. Not easy to combine in a single machine. So how did I solve this? How does the heart of this decoder beat? I decided to use the write enable memory cell. This is a wires plus unit that allows you to load up a signal through the left input, but it only gets stored if the bottom input is truthy, and then it will retain that value indefinitely. Now, since we want this machine to cycle between corners of a layer, and there are 4 corners in a layer, we are going to start off with 4 of these memory cells. And the interesting thing is, initially, we're not even going to care about which values we load up. We're going to try to build a functional clock first, independently of what our actual shape is. Oddly, converting the clock output to our actual shape pieces that we will need later is a completely separate step in the process that we can focus on later. For now, let's just get this clock up and running with random values. All right? So given the way this thing works, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect an input wire to the bottom input, the one that enables the right functionality of this machine. So if we have a 1, only if we have a 1 here, we will be able to store values into the machine. And the second thing is we need the actual values, right? We are going to create a little loop here because this has to be a looping mechanism, like so. And then we are going to get some values. So again, random values. We are going to load these up and we are going to connect them like so. Now, if we enable this, what do we see? We get this shape output right here, the white circle. And this is supposed to be the last value in our sequence. Why does this happen? Why aren't these values stored? Well, because we are not enabling the right functionality at this moment. So what we are going to do is enable this. And then what do we see? We get conflicts on the wire. Why do we get them? Because these values are constantly emitting their signals, right? These constant signals right here, they're constantly emitting. So this won't work. It won't be as straightforward. Instead, what do? We are going to create a load mechanism for this, let's say. And we're going to do that with transistors, like so. This should be better. Let's try this. We're going to connect a change detector to that. So we get 1 pulse of these things loaded up. Now, we also need to make sure that when we press this button, we also enable the right functionality, because otherwise our signals aren't going to get stored. So what do? We are going to create a line, a connection here that ensures that if we click this load up button right here, we also effectively load up the values into the machine. The next problem we encounter, you just saw it, is that we have a conflict on this wire. Why did that happen? Because here we have a 0, and if we press this pulse button, we are going to get a 1. And in the game, a 1 and a 0 are directly conflicting signals. Let's provide some more space here. So they are directly conflicting signals. How can we counteract that? We can create a system where we either get a 1 or a null value. And a null value is not the same as a 0, because a null value and a 1, they don't overlap. They don't contradict each other. And the way we can do that is with this little mechanism right here. And now you will see that instead of a 0, we are actually getting a... I was about to say we are getting a null value, but we're not quite there yet, because we need to do the same thing here, right? This also emits a 0, and we don't want any conflicts. So now we have both, we have null values, or lack of values, we have no values on both of these wires. And now, if I load that up, we are going to emit the pulse, enable the right functionality, and now our values are stored. And the first one that is output on this line is actually the first one that we want to get, which is the red symbol. And now you can see that if I send a pulse through this system, these right enable memory cells, they will switch to the next output. There we go. And the state is retained indefinitely. If I create a constant 1 signal, then we will get a switch on every tick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. Right? So a switch on every tick, or if we send a pulse, then just that, but otherwise the signal will be retained. The next problem we are running into, or we are going to run into, is what happens if we want to reset this module. So now, for example, this clock is in its second stage, which is outputting the green circle in this case, which is, the second value. That's what it comes down to. So let's say that we have found a solution and now we are switching up the shape. In that case, we want the clock to start over with the first value again. And in the current setup, there is no way to do that. So we need to also add a reset mechanism to this. And, if you were wondering why I prepared a third button right here, that has to do with that. Look at this. The way we are going to create a reset is by creating a purposeful conflict on a wire. This is actually one of those situations where you can use conflict to your advantage. It becomes a tool rather than a burden. So what did I decide to do? I decided to create a possibility to emit both a 1 signal and a 0 signal at the same time, because that is going to create a conflict for sure. That is guaranteed to create conflict. So what I am going to do is I'm going to connect that with these lines that are in between, and also this line that has the green signal on it. Now, if we press that button, if we emit a pulse to the reset wire, then we will see a conflict is generated. However, these are memory cells and they retain their value. So as soon as this line becomes conflict free, it becomes free of conflict again, then this one will simply output its value again because the state is retained within the memory cell. So the memory cell, we are not resetting that just yet. How do we do that? Well, in order to reset the memory cell, we also need to enable the write functionality by means of this wire. So the thing we are going to do is we are going to make sure that if we have a pulse on this wire, we also get a pulse on this wire, but not vice versa. And the way we can do that is again with a transistor. So now if we do this, then we will see that the machine resets itself properly. And you can see that by the fact that these displays of the write enable memory cells, they no longer have, they don't longer show anything. And then on the next tick, our machine is reset, and then we can load up the new values like so. That is the core of how that works. Now, we are far from there yet. There is a lot more to this clock mechanism that we will talk about in quite a few future videos still. But at least now you have a grasp of the point of departure, the core mechanism that operates this decoder. In upcoming videos, we will talk about various kinds of additional parameters that we need to take into account. So extra challenging tweaks that we need to make to this mechanism before it's fully operational. If you're curious to know which ones, then be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. And if you enjoyed the video, I always greatly appreciate it if you give this video a thumbs up or leave a nice comment. And with that said, we can wrap it up for today. I've been Bins. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.